All right, welcome back everybody to Altcoin Daily. Make sure you watch the whole video today because in this video, I'm going to articulate the reason that Bitcoin is so revolutionary and the reason I think Bitcoin will continue to go up in price. It is my thesis that most people, although they don't understand why Bitcoin is revolutionary today, it's my thesis that sometime within the next 10 years, everybody's going to understand this argument. So if you know this today, I would think that you'd be in a very fortunate position. So let's get into it. Like the video, take 2 seconds, like the video. It's a small thing you can do, and that's going to get this information out there to as many people as possible. And also, this is a good video to send to a friend who might be interested in what exactly is the value proposition of Bitcoin. Well, let's talk about that. The reason Bitcoin has value and the reason Bitcoin is valuable is because for the first time in human history, we have a money that is not controlled by a government, a bank, or a third party. Bitcoin is permissionless. If you choose to opt into Bitcoin, if you choose to own and transact with Bitcoin, they cannot censor you. You are now above censorship because Bitcoin is censorship-resistant money. It is decentralized. With Bitcoin, there is no single point of failure. Bitcoin's network is secured by the users all across the globe. If you store your Bitcoin properly, Bitcoin is unconfiscatable. That means as you accumulate wealth, you have nothing to worry about. There's no way they can take your money away from you if you store your Bitcoin properly. Bitcoin is undebasable because Bitcoin is unprintable. It is the only asset in the world that has a hard monetary policy and a capped supply. The only asset in the world that is this scarce. And what that means to you is, if demand for Bitcoin increases, because right now only 1% of the world's population either owns Bitcoin or knows about Bitcoin, only 1%. So if demand increases above 1%, which I think it will, and since Bitcoin's supply is fixed and capped, that means the price is going to have to go up. And more than that, and this is something that I don't think a lot of people understand, they don't understand that Bitcoin isn't just a technology. Bitcoin isn't just a tech startup or a website. It isn't like a MySpace or a Facebook. Bitcoin is money. And money is different from tech because money is all about trust. So the question is, well, what do we need for people to trust Bitcoin? And really, all we need, guys, is time. With time, if you just hold, with time, awareness is going to increase, and then more people are going to, look into Bitcoin, and they might, trust a little bit of their money in Bitcoin. So they're going to buy a little bit of Bitcoin. As more people buy it, the price of Bitcoin goes up, and then as the price goes up, more people are aware, and then more people trust it, and it's just this positive feedback loop which keeps getting bigger and bigger. Now, the most exciting thing for me about Bitcoin, the most exciting thing, is just how early we are in this thing. So I know the natural tendency, no matter, doesn't matter what year you get into Bitcoin, everybody always thinks, I missed the boat, I'm too late, Bitcoin is too expensive right now. And it's this kind of thinking that's going to make you miss out on the greatest wealth transfer in human history, the greatest wealth transfer that the world has ever seen. And, you might be saying to yourself now, Aaron, there is no way that my government is going to let the, quote, greatest wealth transfer the world has ever seen happen. There's no way my government is going to allow that. And what I'm saying to you is, since Bitcoin is decentralized, since Bitcoin has no single point of failure, there's no way a government is going to be able to stop it. There's no way a government's going to be able to stop it. Now, they can hurt it. Oh, they can definitely hurt it, but they can't stop it. And that's really cool. Also, there's a certain amount of game theory involved, right? Because the US isn't going to want to ban Bitcoin because they don't want China to gain an advantage. And China isn't going to want to ban Bitcoin because they're not going to want to let the US gain an advantage. Or, put whatever country you want in there. It's just this game theory that acts in every which way. And even more specifically, in each country, if a politician, at a certain point in time, this is going to be even more clear. But if a politician wants to get elected, they're not going to be very popular if they say, hey, I'm going to ban Bitcoin, because that's where some people have their money, and that's going to make them very unpopular with some of their constituents. What I'm saying is, in the next 10 years, everybody is going to understand what we just went over, I think, which means that you are very fortunate that you understand this now. Because nobody's going to give you a second chance with Bitcoin. Nobody's going to give you a second chance to buy in early because nobody controls it. And you might be going, oh, boo-hoo, oh man, I missed out on buying Bitcoin in the first 10 years of Bitcoin's life. Guys, Bitcoin is a multi-decade monetary revolution. So we are still very early in this, and you don't have the risk that those people had in the first 10 years where they thought, people used to think that Bitcoin was going to zero. They no longer think that. So we're still very early. Bitcoin's been around about 11 years now. Digital scarcity was only created 11 years ago. So this is what I think. If Bitcoin survives just max a couple more decades, it's very likely that Bitcoin's going to survive a lot longer than that. These first 3 decades for Bitcoin are the most important, and it's already survived one. So guys, let's put a finer point in this, where we are right now. Think about this. In less than 80 days, Bitcoin's going to go through its third halving. Bitcoin doesn't have a lot of halvings. There's only going to be so many because there's only going to be so many Bitcoins. And after this one, Bitcoin's supply flow, it's not going to get cut in half again for another 4 years. So we're in a very special time right now. If demand stays the same for Bitcoin after this halving, Bitcoin's price should theoretically increase because demand is the same, but the supply flow got cut in half. Now, if demand increases after this halving, the price is definitely going to increase, in theory, right? Now, beyond that, the pipelines and the on-ramps for both institutional investors and retail investors, they have literally never been greater. And it's hard to have perspective on this if you weren't around for Bitcoin's first 10 years, or even just 3 or 4 years ago. In Bitcoin's first year and a half of its life, it had no market value. You couldn't buy Bitcoin if you wanted to. You could only mine it, or I guess you could trade it with a friend. In Bitcoin's first 5 years of its life, up until 2014, one exchange handled 70% of all Bitcoin transactions worldwide. Now, the first 9 years of Bitcoin's life, up until 2017, in 2017, exchanges were turning people away from buying Bitcoin. Not because they didn't want the business, it's because they didn't have the infrastructure. They couldn't support, they couldn't onboard new users. Now let's cut to today, because today you can buy Bitcoin mobilely on 10 different services. Institutions have on-ramps today, which they didn't have in its first at least 7-8 years of Bitcoin's. My question to you is, do you really think Bitcoin is going to stay at just 1% adoption worldwide? Bitcoin is the best investment in history. Do you really think more people aren't going to be turned on to this? There are hundreds of trillions of dollars of wealth stored in wealth buckets all around the world. The S&P, the Dow Jones, art, gold, property. People invest in art and gold and property and all these things. People keep their money in these things because if they kept their money in cash, the government would devalue that money and then they'd have less wealth. What I'm saying is, if just 1/100% of this money flows into Bitcoin, Bitcoin's going to be well above $100,000. It's just math. There's just no reason to think that people's interest in Bitcoin is going to just be capped at 1% of the world's population. There are so many people in the world. I really liked this interview. I recommend you listen to it yourself. This is Dan Held on Nuggets News. He said something that I really liked. He said,
we've got good objective reasoning as to why we should see another bubble. We've got a halving event, which creates somewhat of a price shock. And then we also have increased demand. And I don't see why Bitcoin would move beyond 0.1% of the world population.
Yeah.
There's plenty more people to buy in. There's plenty more institutions that might want to buy in. All it takes is a few catalyst moments, a few critical individuals, and the price itself. As the price goes up, more people talk about it, which increases awareness, which increases more people buying into it. And it's a viral loop.
So I know you're probably thinking, can I even afford to buy Bitcoin at $9,000? My question to you is, can you afford not to? And of course, you don't need to buy a whole Bitcoin, right? You can buy fractions of a Bitcoin. Many people just buy fractions of a Bitcoin because they still have a piece of that supply that's capped at 21 million. They still have a piece of the pie, even if they just buy a piece of a Bitcoin. Anyways, that's it for me today, my friends. If you got value in this video, send it to a friend. If you got value in this video, give it a big old thumbs up, and I'll see you tomorrow. I'm psyched.